So, why do poor people vote Conservative in the UK? That's what I want to talk about today. So, first we have to talk about education. Poor people, on average, have a lower level of educational attainment, and this is not by accident. There's a reason why student fees in the UK have gone up to £9,000 a year for an undergraduate degree, and this really does wall off education for a lot of people, especially going into professions like being a lawyer or a doctor, where to be a doctor you have to go to university for at least 7 years, and then you're training for another 4 years at least, so 11 years to become a doctor. Jobs like in the media and film production, and those desirable jobs are often kind of given down to their children. Often internships are a key component of working in media jobs and journalism, so you've got that divide between the working class and those professional middle class jobs. So poor people often are, as I say, less educated, so they are more prone to believing what I will talk about next, which is a key component of why poor people vote Conservative. They are more likely to buy into right-wing propaganda. They simply are. Your average person who reads the Daily Mail, the Sun, the Daily Express, the Daily Star, they are more likely to buy into this belief that you work hard, you be an honest person, you probably don't like brown people, you probably think emigration is causing all the problems in the UK. You know, these kind of salt of the earth types that blame everybody else but themselves for their problems. And this can't be understated, just how powerful, particularly in the UK, how powerful the right-wing media are, especially the Times, the Sun, and in particular the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail really does rule the discourse, especially for institutions like the BBC that are meant to be fair and impartial and neutral. Often it's the Daily Mail that guides the parameters, the Overton window of what's accessible to discuss, or what kind of leads the news, essentially. So when you've got such powerful institutions like the right-wing media in the UK that really do have a hegemonic hold on what reality is in some ways, like the culture war, transphobia, immigration, these are very conscious problems, stories that are fed to the public, the British public, and very few people question it. And it's ironic because people on the right usually are the ones who say that they're questioning of the status quo, but really they're exactly in there. They're right in the status quo. It's really people who were on the left who are seriously questioning capitalism and are able to identify the real problems. For example, it's no accident that most academics are left-leaning, because the more you know about the system, the more likely you are to become left-leaning, because we've got evidence and facts on our side, and generally a big part of right-wing ideology and conservatism is fear, it's lies, it's hatred, it's emotional, it's irrational, it's just the fear of the other. So much of conservative ideology comes from a fear of the other based in an insecurity about themselves. They're insecure about their own place, their own skills, their own position, and it's a projection of their insecurity onto the political landscape. So most fear-mongering about immigrants and transphobia is just badly redirected insecurity. So the next one is generational divide. There's a clear generational divide in the UK, at least, probably in other countries, where in the last election in 2019, if people over 65 hadn't voted, it would be a Labour landslide and Jeremy Corbyn would have won easily. So you've got that divide between younger people who are, again, it's inevitable that younger people generally are more educated than older generations. In this case, a lot of people have gone to university, they've got that kind of basis of critical thinking. And I'm not saying that all young people are clever, because not everybody is. But I think there is more of an acceptance and knowledge of the world, and people say you get more right wing as you get older. I think it's just those standards just stay with you pretty much. So whatever an 80-year-old believed 50 years ago, they're pretty much, generally speaking, are going to hold on to that ideology into their adulthood. And also, I think younger people now are being radicalised by the fact that they can't get gainful employment, they can't afford to buy a house, and climate change and their future's looking pretty bleak. So it's going to make them more radical and turn to more radical narratives of what the world is and how we solve the world's problems. And then the last thing I want to talk about in relation to why poor people vote Conservative is the individual narrative. So that is, individual responsibility is what people need to take into account when they're making decisions, which really is a flawed way of thinking, because most problems that we face in the UK are social problems. They're political problems that need political and sociological solutions. Poverty, inequality, obesity, waiting lists for the NHS, homelessness, economic stagnation, lack of social mobility. Most of the problems facing climate change are sociological, broader problems with the system. Whereas people who are less educated and usually older have this individual narrative that if you just work hard and do your best, that things will be okay. But for a lot of people, young people now, that's not the case. For the first time, poor people, poor millennials, are going to be worse off than their parents. So a lot of people actually are worse off, and they're working more as well. Millennials, on average, are working more for less. The wages in the 1970s, I'm sure, house prices as well. If young people had them today, they'd be a lot happier, and there wouldn't be that radicalisation from the left and the right. So why do poor people vote Conservative? Again, often it's lack of education. Right-wing propaganda is the biggest one, because they have real influence. How the news and the discourse is mediated through the Daily Mail and online places like Talk TV and GB News. And then you've got that generational divide between people who are more educated, more progressive, and older people who are a bit more reactionary, who own their own homes, who have had very lucky beginnings with being able to get a good pension and own their own property and have a well-paid job. So then finally you come to the individual responsibility, that perception that people need to work hard to get on, whereas young people now are more aware of social problems. They're more aware of how capitalism has failed and is failing most people, and the broader societal problems that impact them as individuals, and the limits there are to individual actions within a system that has many problems, many complex problems. So that's all I have for you today. Watch all my other videos, and I'll see you next time.